Eric with OzoneTCG. We are taking a look at Zohair's first place Minneapolis, Minnesota regional deck profile. If you guys want to pick up any cards, please use our TCG Player affiliate link in the description below. Zohair, do you want to give me shouts before we get into the deck profile?
Yeah, first off, shout out to Ozone, best team. Shout out to Ryan and Anthony for giving me a car ride to the regional. Probably wouldn't have been able to make it there if it wasn't for them. Shout out to Nick for convincing me that Heat Soul was a good card. And I was vehemently against it. I was wrong. And shout out to Lewis and Joe, Team Carbon Emissions. Second best team.
All right, let's get on right into the main deck. So what'd you play? How many cards did you play in the main deck?
Okay, so this one's a big one. I played 50 card blind second at Ignister.
Okay.
It's like one of my favorite archetypes in the game, and I felt like it was incredibly well positioned in the format. Especially with all the Sword Soul and Despia decks going around, this deck is a really good matchup against those decks. Especially blinding second, because there's a couple cards those decks just lose to, like Mystic Mine and like a combination of hand traps or Lightning Storm and hand traps. And this deck really shines when you can like simplify the game state with cards like those, and then using your one card engines kill your opponent.
Okay.
Yeah, let's get into the deck list. I played 15 starters in this deck because it's a 50 card list. I played 3 Picari, grabs your spell, 3 Achichi, grabs a monster, 3 copies of I Meet You, that's your Rhoda, 3 copies of Signet Mining, it's another pseudo Rhoda, and then because I was playing 50, I needed an extra number of starters to like meet the ratios that I wanted to play, because I felt like I wasn't opening enough before then. So I decided to play 3 Small World in the main deck.
Okay.
This card was great. It just functioned like another Signet Mining. There were times where I was able to, at least in testing, switch out an Ignister for a hand trap in a certain matchup. It felt really good. I liked it. I don't think I'd play the deck without Small World in the future. Aside from that, other Ignister cards, I played 2 copies of Doyon. Previously, I was only playing 1. A lot of standard Ignister lists only play 1. But I do have desires in the main deck, first off, so I wanted more than 1 copy. And one thing that I found was that in grind games, you find yourself missing the second Doyon in the main deck. It came up for me a lot, so I decided to play the second copy. Unfortunately, I can find an Ultra in time, but it is what it is. There's 1 Buru, just part of the combo line. It can send any Ignis from deck to grave and makes the Wind Pegasus to force Backrow before you attempt to kill. Good card, have to play it. And then the last 2 Ignister monsters that are the extenders in the deck, I played 1 Hiyari at Ignister and 1 Gachiri at Ignister. I think this is the coolest card in the deck, especially going Gachiri into access code, just because you can make your access code unaffected and attack twice off the Update Jammer, and after that whole chain resolves, your access code is unaffected and your opponent can't do anything to it. They can't impermanent, they can't Valor it, they can't Nibiru, and you just get to kill them while like ignoring everything else they have. That's a really good card. And then I played 3 AI spells. I played 1 Eye Contact. I max out on field spells on this deck. I feel like it's completely incorrect to only play 1 copy of the field spell, just because if you do, then your infant becomes a huge choke point in your hand, and you can just lose games off your opponent only having 1 hand trap, which I built this deck to beat. And then aside from that, I played 1 copy of each of the Reborn spells, Idle Reborn and Fighting Spirit. These cards are both good. It used to be 2 copies of Idle Reborn. This card came out, and so I swapped it to 1 and 1 just so that I can have 2 Reborns in a single return, which definitely did come up during the tournament. Aside from that, I played 2 copies of Pot of Desires. Going second, you don't really care about banishing the one of, like, any of the one-ofs in your deck.
Okay.
The only one-of you play that really matters is the Buru, and you can still kill them without having access to the Buru. So it didn't matter. What mattered more was having the extra card in your hand to break the board or have the extra bit of gas to get to the access code. I'd play 3 of this if it were possible.
Of course.
Yeah. And then on to the field spells. I played 3 copies of Ignister Island, and the one Terraforming. In this deck, the baby is one of the big choke points in your hand, like when you summon Dark Infant. And so if you already have the field spell in your hand, you can use one of your starters to get to more gas instead of using yellow to double search a field spell to make it so that ashing the infant does nothing. So yeah, I decided to max out on the field spell, and because I'm maxing out on the field spell, Eye Contact becomes a lot better in this deck. And then I played one of the best Ignister cards ever printed. I played 3 copies of Mystic Mine.
There you go.
This was great.
How'd that card perform overall?
Oh, so this card was absolutely incredible. For starters, you can activate it into most Sword Soul and Despia players, and they'll scoop on the spot because, first off, I'm playing a 50 card deck. Those decks, when making their board, thin their deck down a bit, and they're not playing 50 cards, or an out to Mystic Mine in the main deck. So a lot of times it's a 1-card win button. Going into boards, you can activate Mystic Mine, and then you can normal summon your starter, get the starter effect through without fear of Ash or Veiler, and then make Infant and get Infant through without fear of Ash or Veiler. So it's almost like a pseudo Called by the Grave in that sense. So that's really nice. Against a Flunder player, it's kind of like in the way D-Shifter is a turn skip for us. Most of the time against Flunder, if they don't have the wins in their hand, you can normal summon a monster, and then activate Mine and pass back to them. And unless they have like the perfect 2-card combo in their hand, like Eaglin Wins or something, they just won't be able to play the game. And so you can like make Shifter not as big of a problem. This just fills a lot of holes in the strategy, and I think it is just an incredible card, especially because this isn't a deck that just like normally sits on Mine. You use it as almost like a pseudo Kaiser Coliseum when that card was legal. It's like something very neat to play around. And then aside from the mines, the other going second cards in the deck, I played 3 copies of Impermanence, 3 copies of Ash Blossom, 3 copies of Effect Veiler, 3 copies of Driver and the one Gamma, or sorry, 3 copies of Gamma and the one Driver.
Oh, real?
And then for going second spells, I played 3 copies of Lightning Storm. Just really good blowout card, clears Backrow or like clear Sword Soul monsters. And because it came off the list, I wanted to try Change of Heart. And because I didn't just want to play one spell like that, I played the second Mind Control as well for the 50th card.
There you go.
This was interesting. I think it's fine that this card came off the list. There's probably more toxic ways to be using this card, but what I was using this mostly was just trading 1-for-1 with like an interruption my opponent had, like Mind Control or Change of Heart. I was using it to like take a Mirror Jade or a Sword Soul monster, and then I was taking those monsters and linking it away into Security Dragon, because that monster in my main monster zone is a clog for me. So I didn't really get to like take advantage of the fact that Change of Heart gives you a monster that can attack the opponent, but it turned out okay, I think. I'd still probably play these cards in the main. They almost feel like a 4th and 5th copy of Imperm if you draw them, except they're live when while you have cards on the field. But yeah, I think the main deck was really solid. I wouldn't change a thing.
All right, let's go on to the extra deck then.
Yeah, let's go into the extra deck. So one of the best Link 1 monsters in the game, I think. I played Dark Infant at Ignister. It just searches your field spell. It's pretty standard, like any of your starters gets your next monster for combo, and then you grab the field spell, and then you're off to the races. Aside from that, I played one Cyberse Wicked. This grabs your Buru, the level 3 tuner, from your deck for you to make the Wind Pegasus and force Backrow before you make access code and kill. Aside from that, I played 2 copies of Splash Mage. One comes up in the combo turn 1, second one comes up if you get interrupted and need a second push to kill for game. And then for the kill package, I played 1 Update Jammer and 2 Access Code Talker. This is probably non-standard in Ignister deck lists, but I played 2 Access Code just because if you make a double attacking Access Code off of Update Jammer, then your opponent activates Effect Veiler and brings it down back to 23, or they Nibiru you, or they do something to take the monster off the field. That access code is just dead now and it can't kill your opponent. So what you can do is, if you get Nibiru'd, you can turn it into a Link Spider, or if it gets Veilered, you can let it sit there. You summon any extender from your hand. If you did the 1 card line, you already have 1 extender in your hand off the Doyon combo. And then any other extender to make a Transcode Talker. And then after they summon the Nib, you make the Transcode Talker. You can revive the Update Jammer that you made previously. And then instead of going for a 4300 access code that can attack twice, you now get to make a 5600 or 5300 access code that can attack twice. And even if you used all 3 attributes in your grave before your opponent Nibiru'd you, Transcode is an Earth monster, and so you can at the very least use the Transcode to clear the Nibiru from your opponent's field and still get that 300 in twice per game. Aside from that, I played the 1 Wind Pegasus at Ignister. I think this is definitely the correct synchro to play every single time, just because there's no in-engine way to deal with Backrow aside from the Wind Pegasus. Because if I didn't have this card, your opponents would just be able to hold infinite impermanence, like set on the field, until the access code is made, if you didn't get to make Gachiri before it was summoned. It's just really nice. This will like force Scarlet Sanguine and a bunch of other cards. So that's great. I played Decode Talker Heat Soul. Shout out to Nick.
There it is.
So this card is definitely a lot better than just the Fire Phoenix that previous Ignister lists play. Not just because it's a fire target to reveal that just makes the IMU search a fire target. You can activate Mystic Mine and make Heat Soul if you don't have enough gas to kill. And in doing so, you can draw 1 card on your turn, draw on your opponent's turn, and since they can't play anything off the mine, you go back to your turn and draw 2 for turn as well. Because you draw for turn and then draw for Heat Soul as well. I did that against a Despia player and was able to draw 4 cards. They had a Heat Soul and a Brave token on the field while mine was up. I normal summoned a monster and they were forced to Mirror Jade right there. Otherwise, I make my first access code and suddenly they're locked under mine again and they won't be able to use the Mirror Jade at any other point in the game. While I had like 6 other cards in my hand, so they just took a body off the field and I made a double attacking access code anyway. Felt great. I played... So this is the blind second list. I was trying to kill people, but there are times where you're forced to go first. So I did play the 1 Dark Templar at Ignister, and the whole big monster that everyone knows the deck for, Arrival.
Yep.
I made this like 3 times the entire event. It is really good going first, but especially into like Sword Soul and Despia, they struggle to out it. I think like Despia's outs are Titaniclad, made with a certain number of levels. I think Sword Soul's only out to this card is Chengying with a certain number of cards banished. So it's relatively difficult for them to out, but it is possible for them to out it, so I didn't opt to go first for most of my games. Going into Flunder, I opted to go first, just because that deck doesn't have an out to a 3000 attack monster. Yeah, I think I went 8-0 today. I 2-0'd every single one of my opponents, except for Flunder players. I 2-0'd both of my Flunder matchups, and just game 3 I just chose to go first, threw off their siding, and summoned a rival Cybers. And because they don't have an out, it just won the game on the spot just because of all the pressure it applied. And then final card in the side deck is Security Dragon. This is here instead of Light Dragon at Ignister just because you can still combo without revealing Light Dragon off I Meet You to get your yellow starter. This is quite important in the deck because I'm siding Nibiru, we're playing Change of Heart in the main, and we're playing Cyframe Gear Gamma. All of those cards clog your main monster zone, which makes it impossible for you to continue playing the Ignister deck, at least, without clearing the main monster zone. This is a generic Cyberse Link 2 monster that can take anything as material. So you just turn the Nibiru or the monster you seal off Change of Heart or the Gammas into Security Dragon. And because it's a Cyberse, you can go into all your Cyberse cards and continue playing as if nothing happened.
Awesome. Would you change anything in the extra deck?
I think the extra deck is pretty solid as is. If I stop playing Gamma, Change of Heart, Mind Control, and Nibiru, the Security Dragon would become a Light Dragon at Ignister.
Okay.
But as long as those cards are in my list, I'm going to be playing this. I think the extra deck is pretty solved.
Fair enough. Alright, let's go into the side deck.
Yeah, so let's start with the going first cards. So this is a blind second deck. Does best blinding second in this format, I think, in my opinion. But people will make you go first. And so I did want to play cards to swap out the Gammas and the Lightning Storms, just because those cards are dead beyond turn 1 while your opponent's going first. So I opted to play 3 copies of Rivalry, 3 copies of Dimensional Barrier, and the 1 Donmari at Ignister. Okay. These are just win buttons. Like, this is a win button into Despia, this is a win button into a whole bunch of decks other than Despia and Sword Soul. Actually, not into Sword Soul, but it's a win button into Despia and a bunch of other decks. The 1 Donmari is there just because this is a Brit going second, because you're not making your Link 6 to kill them. But going first, you can send an Ignister card from deck to grave for free. And in doing so, you can send this, and suddenly turn your Arrival Cybers into a one-time use Hot Red Dragon Archfiend. And I think that is decent when you go first with the deck. So I just decided to side it for when I think I'm going first.
Okay.
So those are pretty good.
Rivalry and D-Barrier come up?
That's the funny thing. I sided them in going first. I didn't see these all event.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, like in theory, these cards are insane and win the game on their own, but I had to win my games with Ignister cards.
There you go. Did you side in Donmari every single time you went first?
Every single time I went first or thought I was going first, I brought this card in.
Okay.
Because this is just like part of the combo. You send it off green and play as if everything else was normal. For the last side cards, I played 3 copies of Nibiru. I didn't want to play this in the main deck just because it's really bad into Despia, and I expected there to be a lot of Despia at the event. I only played against 1 player though. But it's really good into Sword Soul. And so I wanted to keep this just because this like forces them to have a really good hand to play through it, otherwise they can't. And I think in all 3 of my Sword Soul matchups that came up, just was an incredible card. Okay, yeah, and then finally for the last 5 cards in the extra deck, I played 3 copies of Cosmic Cyclone, 1 copy of Feather Duster, 1 copy of Red Reboot. I really wanted to respect Backrow decks, even though I didn't get to face any. I still just wanted to have these in the deck to like make sure I don't get completely blown out by a Floodgate deck. Just searching in my 50 card list for Lightning Storms is my only out to stuff. So that's why I wanted to play these. I thought these were like the best back row hate cards in the game. I didn't want to play Twin Twister just because this is a going second deck. You need as many cards in your hand to out the cards your opponent has. And Twin Twister making you discard a card made me lose a couple games in testing. So I opted for the Cosmics and it performed pretty well. I didn't actually bring the Feather Duster reboot into any of my games, just again because I didn't see back row, but I brought the Cosmic Cyclones in going first against Flunder along with my Donmari.
Okay.
I just swapped it for just the Cyframe package, and so that performed pretty well. I ended up cosmicking someone's map and stopping them from pushing. Felt pretty good. But aside from that, I think the deck list knows in the past, but this is my first IRL regional top, let alone regional win. So I've been super excited about that. Hopefully many more to come.
Yeah, that is exactly what Ozone is about. This is, again, Eric and Zohair with OzoneTCG. If you guys want to pick up this deck or any other decks you may be looking for Hartford, for the NAWCQ, Post Tactical Masters, anything like that, again, please be sure to use our TCG Player affiliate link.